April 1945. As Allied forces pushed deeper into a shattered Germany, they began uncovering the terrifying technological secrets of the Third Reich. They found underground factories, revolutionary jet aircraft, and the sprawling complex at Peenemünde, where the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile, had been built. But the most valuable prizes weren't machines. They were the minds that had created them. The United States and Soviet Union, allies for the moment, were already eyeing each other as future adversaries. A new arms race was beginning, and America was determined not to lose. Thus began a secret, morally fraught mission to find and capture the Nazi scientists and engineers whose knowledge could decide the next global conflict. It was an operation that would trade justice for knowledge, and in doing so, reshape the 20th century. The primary target was Wernher von Braun, the charismatic, brilliant, and ambitious mastermind behind the V-2 rocket. As the Soviet Red Army advanced from the east, von Braun and his team of top scientists made a calculated decision. They would surrender to the Americans. They knew their value. Hiding in a Bavarian ski resort, they awaited capture like royalty. Meanwhile, a secret American team known as Operation Paperclip was scouring the countryside, armed with black lists of the most desired German scientific minds. Their mission was to find these men before the Soviets or the British, and to get them talking before the world learned the full horror of the slave labor camps where their rockets had been built. The hunt was a race against time and morality. The problem was stark. Many of these scientists were not just brilliant engineers. They were dedicated Nazis, members of the party and the SS. Wernher von Braun himself held the rank of SS Sturmbannführer. They had overseen the Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp, where tens of thousands of slave laborers died in horrific conditions building the V-2. To bring these men to America, the U.S. government would have to whitewash their pasts. A secret directive from President Truman forbade importing any known Nazis. So the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, JIOA, simply rewrote the files. Incriminating evidence was removed or downplayed. SS membership became a formality. War crimes became necessary wartime service. A Faustian bargain was struck. America would gain a technological edge, and the scientists would receive immunity, new identities, and prosperous careers. The first wave of scientists, including von Braun and his core team, were quietly shipped to the United States under military custody. They were initially housed at Fort Bliss, Texas, a sprawling army base adjacent to the White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico. Their mission was simple yet profound: recreate and advance German rocket technology for the United States Army. They lived in a strange limbo, well paid and respected for their minds, but technically prisoners of war, their movements restricted. They began by assembling and launching captured V-2 rockets, teaching a generation of American engineers the secrets of rocketry they had perfected in the fires of war. The rocket men were the most famous, but they were not the only ones. Operation Paperclip also recruited experts in chemical warfare, aviation medicine, and even biological weapons. Men like Dr. Kurt Blome, who had experimented with plague vectors on prisoners at Dachau, was hired by the U.S. Army to work on biological warfare. His past crimes conveniently overlooked. Dr. Hubertus Strughold, who had conducted high-altitude experiments on prisoners, became the father of American space medicine. The net was cast wide, bringing in specialists whose knowledge was deemed too valuable to fall into Soviet hands, regardless of the bloodstains on their records. The Cold War justification was beginning to eclipse the moral reckoning of the last war. The Americans were not acting in a vacuum. The Soviet Union was running its own, even more aggressive version of Paperclip, known as Operation Osoaviakhim. In a single night in October 1946, Soviet forces rounded up thousands of German scientists, engineers, and their families, forcibly relocating them to the USSR. There, they were set to work reverse engineering German technology and jump-starting the Soviet missile program. The two superpowers, now locked in a Cold War, were both being propelled forward by the same German minds that had built weapons for Hitler. The race for the scientists had become a central front in a new silent conflict. As the Cold War intensified, the guests became residents. In the early 1950s, the legal fiction holding the scientists was dissolved. They were granted permanent residency and eventually U.S. citizenship. Wernher von Braun became a celebrity, a regular feature in magazines and on television, explaining the wonders of spaceflight to a captivated American public. His Nazi past was a distant, unmentioned shadow. The U.S. government, which had sanitized their files, now had a vested interest in protecting their new assets. The complicity was now complete. The men who had built weapons for the Third Reich were now heroes of American progress. The ultimate payoff for Operation Paperclip came with the dawn of the space age. When the Soviet Union shocked the world by launching Sputnik in 1957, America turned to the one man who they believed could catch up, Wernher von Braun. His team, now at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, became the architects of the American space program. The technological lineage was direct and undeniable. The V-2 rocket led to the Redstone, which led to the Jupiter, and finally, to the colossal Saturn V that propelled Americans to the moon. The same mind that had designed a weapon to terrorize London had now built the machine that achieved one of humanity's greatest peaceful triumphs. It was the ultimate rehabilitation, a narrative of redemption written in fire across the sky. The ultimate payoff for Operation Paperclip came with the dawn of the space age. When the Soviet Union shocked the world by launching Sputnik in 1957, America turned to the one man who they believed could catch up, Wernher von Braun. His team, now at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, became the architects of the American space program. The technological lineage was direct and undeniable. The V-2 rocket led to the Redstone, which led to the Jupiter, and finally, to the colossal Saturn V that propelled Americans to the moon. The same mind that had designed a weapon to terrorize London had now built the machine that achieved one of humanity's greatest peaceful triumphs. It was the ultimate rehabilitation, a narrative of redemption written in fire across the sky. Operation Paperclip's legacy is one of brilliant success and profound moral failure. It brought over 1,600 scientists, engineers, and technicians to the United States, giving America a decisive advantage in the Cold War and making the moon landing possible. But it also meant that the architects of horrific weapons and the beneficiaries of slave labor were never held accountable for their crimes. They were welcomed, rewarded, and celebrated. The operation forces us to confront an uncomfortable question: how far should a nation go to ensure its security and technological dominance? The story of Operation Paperclip is not a simple tale of good versus evil, but a complex and shadowy chapter where the lines between progress and complicity were forever blurred.